Grant Thornton released data relating to South African business owners and macroeconomic factors that affect this country and investment in this country. While the statistics are still worryingly high, Grant Thornton reveals that the impact of contact crime on South African business is on the decline, and that the general mood in South Africa is that of optimism. Earlier on, I spoke with the national chairperson for Grant Thornton, Leonard Brehm, and asked him to just provide us with the details of the main findings.
Grant Thornton does this annual survey of privately held businesses in about 40 countries, covering most important countries of the world, and about 11,000 respondents in the survey. We do it in South Africa, have done it for at least 10 years, and we cover 600 people. We now do it on a quarterly basis. And essentially, we look at a whole lot of business factors that are in common with the rest of the world, like optimism, business constraints, and the like. The results that we've issued today are the South African specific issues, because we are allowed to ask South African only questions.
Right.
Questions that might not be of interest at all in other countries.
But impact the environment here.
Yeah. And the typical question that we have asked for many years is, are you affected by crime? Are you, your family, your employees or their families affected by violent crime? We aren't surveying white collar crime. And the result this year says 50% say yes. Now 50% is very high, indeed awful. But when you contrast it to where it was a few years ago, it's been coming down steadily. In 2007 was 84%. And this number has dropped a little bit every year to the present 50%.
Let's focus on those statistics, because if you spoke to authorities, they're adamant that crime is on the decline, particularly violent crime. We're a bit worried about the propensity for violence towards policemen themselves, but the public should be feeling safer. At least that's what the authorities tell us. Why is business saying the contrary?
Well, our statistics back it up, because they do say we're down from 84% each year of the last 4 years down to 50%. But what it does say at the end of the day, it's still terrible.
50%
so better,
decline.
yes, but still terrible.
And so businesses' response to it, are they likely to immigrate because of crime? That was
well, that's a question we ask every year again. Have you thought seriously of emigrating? And in the last 2 years it's been steady at 17-18%. The year before that was 32%. When you ask them, why are you thinking of emigrating? What's the main cause? Their crime is the big one. But again, a few years ago it was 93% said crime, and in the most recent year only 50-something% said crime. Other factors like political uncertainty have become more important in the last year.
Let's talk about that political uncertainty, because already investors are getting jittery around the rhetoric for nationalization, regulatory issues like black economic empowerment, and just general economic policy, you know, where you get told that there's a new growth path that's going to put a cap on executive salaries, there'll be minimum wages. Those kinds of issues get people a little nervous.
Well, our survey in fact was conducted just before the latest round of the ANC Youth League's meeting and so on. And so I suspect if we did it now, we'd find even more concern. But when we did it, and that was a couple of months ago, we found that 50% of respondents felt that political uncertainty was a problem for them in their businesses.
Absolutely. Okay. To what extent do issues like regulatory issues across sectors impede the growth of a business?
We survey what are the most important constraints on your business. And we've done this for years, and we find every year it comes out with the same answer. Lack of a skilled workforce is far and away the most significant issue for South African businesses, which it isn't for most countries. It is in developing countries, but in most countries it's not. And then red tape. Too much regulation is the second most important factor, and that one, by the way, in the last year has gone up quite a bit.
Really?
Well, there's a whole lot of new things. If you think about all the regulation involved in the new Consumer Protection Act for business, and then there's the new Companies Act, of course, that we specifically surveyed. And we asked people, you know, are you aware of the provisions of the new Companies Act? Are you well informed? Half of them say yes, and half of them say no.
Before we go into that area, perceptions on service provision when we talk about government and the general political environment. I mean, there's been the huge debacle around billing and rates and taxes, particularly in a metropole like Johannesburg, where you'd expect things are supposed to work fairly well.
we surveyed for the first time government service delivery this year because of the fact that it's topical, and we asked, has that affected your business? And 50% said yes. So it is affecting them. And then if you ask what is the most important effect, it isn't the billing, by the way. That's the second most important effect. The most important effect was in the area of the government utilities, electricity, gas. I guess, although we did not specifically ask the question, but to me it's the reliability of the supply. You know, if you press the switch and the electricity isn't there, that's very important for you.
I mean, obviously, certainly if you don't have a steady flow of services and if utilities are getting more expensive, it impacts operationally the business. But did you get any indication of how businesses are surviving some of these changes or constraints in the economy?
Well, you know, business is resilient. And business people take these things in their stride, and they make plans in order to make sure that you stay in business. But it is, we are optimists in South Africa, all of us. And if you ask people in general, are you optimistic about business conditions? Yeah. We're always, no matter how bad things get, or we think they are, we're way ahead of the rest of the world on average in terms of optimism in this country. So we probably know how to deal with it.